Good evening and welcome to Zion's Banner. I know it might seem like I'm starting just a little early. Really what's going on here is that I am trying to get us started right at the time that I scheduled to start. And I was talking with my daughter who's in digital marketing, and I thought, are there ways to make this appear better for those who tune in a little later? And sometimes people will tune into a YouTube broadcast and might not see anything on the screen, and that will tend to bother them. And so I thought we'd shoot more for being exactly on time. That doesn't mean people can't come in late. It just means I'm going to try to be more punctual. And this also gives me the opportunity to go ahead and do a little bit of announcements and things like it. Tomorrow may run a little long. We're going to discuss one of the most important doctrines, if not the most, one of the most important doctrines. Let's not use too much hyperbole. The atonement. We're going to be looking at Jesus's crucifixion and the theories of atonement and the issue of limited atonement and the whole narrative there and what that tells us. So we're really going to be doing kind of a more in-depth study or overview of the doctrine of atonement. I'm going to encourage you to join us. You may not have thought about the theories of atonement. We're going to look at the actual passage. You may not have thought about the issue of limited atonement and how it impacts Jesus's original audience. And so we're going to touch on some of those things tomorrow night. And so I encourage you to be here. Beyond that, you'll notice in the chat that there is information about the upcoming Strong Tower Conference with a link. There will be more information coming as the conference gets put together. The details are there. Most of the conference will be held at, I believe it's Costa Mesa, Calvary Chapel. And so if you're in the New York area, there's the link. If you're not, things will be posted online, but I don't have the details as to how they'll be posted online. The other thing is that I would like to make them available to you, but I don't want to run roughshod over George Said, who is hosting the conference. And so I am not certain as to how to deal with some of those things yet, but they will be coming up. There's some information for you. It's also in the information side of the video. So let's get started tonight. Before I do that, let me actually screen share. I can do this tonight. I thought I could do this tonight. Oh, I'm under window instead of entire screen. Look at that. And I can go ahead and do that. And there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share a photo. So there you go. There's the info on the Strong Tower Conference. And I discovered you can share windows and full screens. And so I'm going ahead and doing that. I want you to notice some of the names that aren't mine. Okay. Anthony Rogers will be there. He's going to see Eddie Decor. And you're going to end up seeing Dr. Jay Smith and Tony Costa. So we've got quite a lineup there. And so that will be an exciting conference. I have a lot of prep to do to stand up there with those guys and have my stuff all ready. So tonight we're going to continue. Now, the reason I'm going to do this is, why are these things happening now where we have movements like the LGBT, I even run out of initials and some of this stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and give that information. It looks like the wrong PowerPoint is up. So I'm going to fix that for us and bring the right PowerPoint up because it's not appearing the way I want it to. There we go. That's a little better. There we go. Sorry about that. It just appeared wrong and I've got it fixed. I'm going to go to slideshow from beginning. There we go. And we're good to go. Every so often, little things around the We're not going to be sharing we're going to be sharing an entire screen. There we go. All right, there's the entire screen for you, and I'm going to bring this back up. Okay. And Slam says the regular M to M crowd. Okay. I never thought of myself that way, but that's kind of cool. I'll accept that. That's cool. Shout out to Slam. Good to see you in the house. Shout out to Chris Russell. So we're going to talk a little bit about the biblical purpose of sex and marriage. So this is not rated PG for kids. I'm not going to be gross or anything, but we are going to discuss some adult topics and what the Tanakh really says. I mean, does the Old Testament give us any ideas about what marriage and intimate relations are about? And how does that impact the tick-tock guy who threw one section out there and said it was misinterpreted? Because there's a whole context to the Bible. There's the immediate context, and then there's the meta-narrative context. And the Bible really does fit together. Next week, I'm thinking about looking at the two passages that the tick-tock guy never wants you to look at. And that's in Judges and Genesis. So we may end up finishing with that. We may end up moving on. I actually probably will finish with that. I think we need to look at Judges. When a tribe of Israel almost gets wiped out. And yes, Sodom and Gomorrah, the infamous passage that anybody from TikTok talking about this topic would not want to discuss. And the real issue of, was it hospitality? So let's talk about this. Why is this stuff happening now? Well, first of all, I do want to put a shout out there. I am really hoping that somebody of that lifestyle actually has the guts to tune in. Because I think it is good to have dialogue. And so I want to put a loving plea out there. Okay, for those of us who follow Jesus Christ, we are ambassadors. We explain the kingdom and how the kingdom works to other people and how you enter the kingdom. And so I can strongly disagree with somebody and still want to put a loving plea out there. First of all, desires aren't the same as acts. Okay, we may all have harmful desires in one area or another, and we may struggle to overcome them. My mother, for many years, was a smoker. It didn't seem to do her lungs any good, but it was very hard for her to deal with, and she eventually overcame that prior to her death. And so she struggled with that. And there are things that I struggle with and you struggle with. Now, the homosexual individual is being told reinforced by the community, the LGB community, that he was created that way. I mean, the comment that I got, and I will tell a few stories about encounters, was that, why did God make me this way? You weren't created for this type of behavior, my dear friend, caught in this lifestyle. You really weren't. You may have these desires, but this was not what you were created for. We're going to talk about what this was all created for. Also, I understand that you're struggling in a situation with the disordered desire or inclination. I don't deny that people have sin inclinations. I don't deny that some people are more susceptible to alcoholism than others. I don't deny that. You have a disordered love or a disordered desire. That's what Aristotle would have called it, a disordered love. I understand that. And compassion should be shown you, not acceptance. We need to distinguish between compassion and acceptance. Compassion is about caring about the individual. Acceptance means that I have to agree with the individual in their individual act or attitude. Genuine compassion should be shown. There should not be cruelty. There are those in the church who can reach out, who will reach out. Homosexuals often feel that they will never be reached out. They will never be accepted. I'm not saying accepting their behavior, but as people, they will be shunned. There is an uncomfortableness with this, certainly, but there are those, and there are even those who are equipped to uniquely minister in these areas. Please do not let your struggle with this disordered desire cause you to lay aside what God would have for you. People do not want you to continue in this lifestyle, not because we're homophobic, but because we want you to be the person God created you to be. See, I think that's a real gospel ethic. That's a real creation ethic. And so if you do tune in, if your friend gets you to tune in, if you actually have the gumption to start seeing this video, I want to encourage you that it is a desire for you to experience your humanity and your unique individuality in the way that God desired it to be, not the way it feels now. And so that's my loving plea. It's not controversial. In fact, I want to relay an instance in which I ran into this. I did an open forum, and I may have mentioned this at Johnson State College. And there was a lovely young lady named Leslie, and she ended up asking me about what was then civil unions. And I explained the position in front of everybody there. And I said something to her. I said, I don't want you to continue in this lifestyle because I don't want you to miss out on the better thing that Jesus has for you. And I think that's the way we need to state things like this. You are missing out on something fantastic. You are missing out on being the person you could be, and I don't want that for you. And, you know, she's a really sweet gal, took it really well. And we didn't agree at the end of the evening, but we were able to agree to disagree. In the previous program, a gentleman did a tick-tock. I do not see any way to get a real sound theology into a tick-tock. I see a way to throw little tiny grenades out there to blow things up that aren't very accurate. I do see TikTok as being useful for Christians. It may draw people to YouTube sites or to other places, and there may be ways to use it to at least get part of a verse in. But 2 minutes is not a lot of time to discuss things of this enormity. And so he dealt with this TikTok, and he lobbed a grenade. And so I am going ahead and dealing with all of this. And shout out to Lindsay. And so what we're going to do is deal with the framework. It's one thing to pull a verse out and try to make it say something. It's another to look at what would be called biblical theology and see if it fits. So again, yes, the immediate context is important, but there is no verse that is not part of a larger story here. And if we ask whether the Tanakh agrees with homosexuality, we have to ask whether it agrees with homosexuality in its entirety. And so what I want to point out here is something that I really kind of want to put out there. Given that the whole Old Testament is based on a creation framework, this is why I'm a creationist. No, I don't get into really knockdown dragouts over exactly how old the earth is. But I believe that the Genesis narrative is inspired by God and gives us an accurate picture of how God created the world and the way he designed things to be and what he designed human beings to be. And I think one of the reasons that we're having problems in our society with so many of these issues is that our society, by and large, has totally and completely left a creational framework. That doesn't mean everyone was a believer. It doesn't believe everybody took Genesis the same way. But there was a sense in which there was a creational framework. And the idea that there was a teleology. Now, that's a fancy word for there being a purpose or goal from something, from the Greek word teleos, that there was a teleology to human beings, that there was a purpose to human beings that we were created to serve. And so I am an avid creationist. Look, for most of my life, my grandfather celebrated the Sabbath on the seventh day of the week on the basis of that. And so I think one of the problems that we face is that we have left a creational framework for a pagan framework. The more our church goes over Corinthians, the more I am convinced that we are living in what is rapidly becoming a pagan society. And so when we look at the Tanakh, we have to look at it in terms of a creational framework. The Tanakh is about the eventual coming of one who will restore that which was lost in Genesis chapter 3. Everything revolves around a creational framework. And so if we're going to ask whether the Tanakh permits a given behavior, we have to go back to creation and say, well, does the Tanakh permit creationally? Does this fit? As human beings were created, so we were to remain. Okay, God displayed us, created us to be image bearers. If we can get anything through our heads, it's that we were created to be image bearers. We lost the power to be image bearers. Jesus came to restore the power for us to be true image bearers in the way we were designed to be. Who knew that the gospel could be tied back into the creation and restoration? If you understand this, then you will begin to be able to understand the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures. If you move away from this framework, the Hebrew scriptures make little sense, and there's no way to analyze overall whether the Old Testament really supports something in its entirety. We can find individual verses, but when we start moving towards biblical theology, we were created to be image bearers. Now, part of that mandate included dominion over the world. Okay, I have an answer for the environmental crisis. We were created to be stewards, and we're fallen. There you go. And you are not going to repair. I just listened to some girl going off and saying, should global initiatives be created to deal with all these crises, the global warming crisis and this crisis and that crisis? And I'm not going to get into how I feel about all that, but I think there's an answer to all that. The answer to all that is all those crises are a symptom of a fallen world and fallen people. And if you want to create a global initiative that will deal with global whatever, you have to go back to global, or you have to go back to redemption. The earth will be restored. Whatever we do to it, it will be restored. There'll be a new heavens and a new earth. God can undo what we do. We were given dominion, but that doesn't mean we weren't image bearers. We were given dominion as image bearers to go ahead and have be the force for restoration. This does not seem like a hard statement. Humanity is composed of two genders. Who knew? I mean, that's creational. Now, where did I get that from? I didn't go to the New Testament to get that. I went to the Tanakh to get that. So we're looking at Genesis 2:21 through 25, and the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam. Now, prior to this, Adam named all the animals, and he discovered that giraffes, cows, kangaroos are all wonderful to hang out with, but they just are not a suitable companion for him. Did God already know this? God knew this. Adam needed to know this. And he slept, and he took out one of his ribs and closed the flesh around its place. Someone once asked me why we are not missing a rib. If you end up having an arm cut off, that doesn't mean your children will be missing an arm. So that's just a little, aside. Then the rib which the Lord had taken from man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. Now, that's not what the Hebrew says. She shall be called Isha because she was taken out of Ish. And so there's a connection between the word for woman and the word for man. But it's not Adama. That was a character in Battlestar Galactica. So we don't want to get confused here as to what that is. Because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and the woman, and they were not ashamed. Now, this is the creational account of the relationship and in terms of intimacy and marriage that God set up. Let's break it down real quickly. The man leaves his mother and father and joins to his wife. They become one unit. Becoming one flesh includes both their unity, which they form a new unit, and the actual intimate act. I don't see them as being separated. I see them as both being encapsulated in this phrase, becoming echad betzer, one flesh. They were naked and they were unashamed. In other words, they enjoyed intimacy without a lot of problems. This is the way life was supposed to be. This is the Tanakh's view of marriage and human intimacy. We're going to talk about the purpose of that, but that is the biblical account. Now, once you leave this account, you can fall in love with a lamppost and it's okay, but we'll talk about that later. This is what was meant to be. So everything in the Tanakh related to marriage and human intimacy and relationships and the nature of the family is going to tie back to this passage. And, that is really good medical info. I really like that. We got an RN pointing out that ribs can grow back, especially in someone who was just created. So there's a little medical intel that I did not have. I had a year of pre-pharmacy, but that did not get me to the place that Slam is. So I really appreciate that little medical tidbit there that I would not have known. And since I don't go around breaking my ribs a lot or losing them, I never thought much about it. Okay. It provides for a unit that displays God's image uniquely. Now, I want to say something. There is a lot of discussion about gender roles and gender equality and all of that. Without getting into that, this is the ethic here, okay, that we're dealing. The man and the woman in a marriage become a new unit that displays God uniquely in a way that would not be displayed before. God didn't just come up with this because it was fun. It is fun, but it also is work, and God didn't do it for this reason. God knew that a male-female unit could display him in a way that is unique, that does not take anything away from biblical singleness. Yes, there are those that God would have be single because their mission or his plan for them in life is such that to fulfill that, it will be more effective. And Paul talks about times in history when singleness may have been required because it would leave one undistracted from the work of the gospel. But in the creational sense, and remember, this is prior to Genesis chapter 3, so the world is still perfect at this point. And that also helps us a little bit. Okay? Homosexuality, we need to understand this, paints or provides an improper picture of God. There are things that are part of being a gal that will uniquely display characteristics of God. That's not stereotyping. That's just understanding that men and women are different. They may even be born that way. They are born that way. Helen Reddy, who was known for this song, I Am Woman, who existed during the time when there was quite a bit of discussion about the genders, did an experiment and discovered that she kept giving her boy a doll and her girl a truck, and the boy kept taking the truck and switching with the girl to the doll. And she finally started to think that boys might be a little different. Having raised boys and girls, I can tell you that they are indeed different. And so this is a unique picture of God. Both genders are necessary to display God. I absolutely love this point to say to somebody, look, here's what you need to understand. Both genders are necessary. And basically, you can extend it out and say all the cultures that exist in the world, sanctified and made holy by Jesus Christ, are also necessary to display God, because God is so great that he can't be displayed fully and the way he desires to be any other way. Therefore, the Hebrew scriptures do not accept homosexuality because of the basic purpose given to humankind. This is not a matter of homophobia. This is a matter of original design. What I'm going back to is the original design of things. Okay, what I'm saying is when we look at the biblical narrative and we start with the beginning of the biblical narrative and we work from a creational, restorational framework or redemptional framework, this is where we get to. So all of these weird things that are going on now are going on because we have lost a grasp of what things should be. Now, we haven't necessarily, but our culture has certainly lost that sort of reality. And so what we're talking about is divine design. Now, one of the points I brought up with a young man who grew up going to my Bible studies, but got exposed to the secular college. By the way, the secular college tends to push this stuff, and so is everything else right now, is that marriage pictures something about God that cannot be pictured in a homosexual relationship. By the way, every time I typed homosexuality in Grammarly, it said archaic term, and I did not change the term because I do not feel I need to change the term. Words mean what they mean. Okay? This is a powerful argument. Okay? God has certain characteristics about him. Now, this is not an argument that an Orthodox Jew can make. This is one of the ways in which Judaism, as it exists now, is a little bit anemic in its view of God. No, I'm being nice. Is anemic in its view of God. God contains within himself both unity and diversity. Male and female are diverse. I know they're diverse. I'm happily married. I've been married quite a few years. We're coming up on our wedding anniversary again. We are diverse. Okay? God contains within himself unity and diversity. Both of those things are contained within God. That's why we see them in creation. A male with a male or a female with a female coming together to form a union, I know we're getting into it here, lacks diversity. And the way I put it was that such a union has unity but lacks diversity. A male and a female coming together are diverse and they form a unit or unity. Therefore, heterosexual marriage displays both the unity that is in God and diversity that is in God at the same time, the way God's plurality or Trinity displays unity, being one essence, and diversity, three persons. And so I have made this argument, and actually I even mentioned it in apologetics class, and J.P. Moreland loved it. We need to approach this from the standpoint of saying, hey, this displays God. Do you like to be misrepresented? Well, God doesn't like to be misrepresented either. And homosexuality misrepresents God to creation and to humankind. And so it's a misrepresentation of God. And therefore, it is not acceptable. Creationally, it is not acceptable. As a misrepresentation of God, it is not acceptable. Now let's talk about marriage. And I will let you know that I actually, I'm thinking about Chris. He'd appreciate that because he knows the Vermont legislature. I made this argument at the Vermont legislature, which was picked up by the public radio station that televised the open discussion where people could come and address the state legislature on the issue of civil unions. They actually had an open house. They allowed so many of us to speak. God gave me the unique opportunity to speak, and I discussed this very thing. Just so that you will enjoy the humor, there was a discussion about persecution and equal rights and due process. And I started my speech by saying, hello, I appreciate non-discrimination. I appreciate people having rights. In fact, I started by saying, hi, I'm a Jewish believer in Jesus. I'm the closest thing to kosher bacon you're ever going to see. And so I appreciate the issue of prejudice. However, I said my basis for ignoring, resisting, and being against civil unions has to do with this. Marriage belongs to God. Any attempt to redefine it or change it is theft. So when someone said to me, why don't you believe in homosexual marriage? Because marriage cannot be defined by man. It is an institution that belongs to God, grounded in Genesis. Therefore, what God has defined, human beings have no right to redefine. That which belongs to God, human beings have no right to take. According to the Genesis account, God has one definition of marriage and one definition only. That's a man and a woman coming into union. There is no other definition of marriage. Anything that defines itself as marriage that does not have those characteristics or has opposite characteristics is, by God's definition, not marriage. End of story. You can call it what you want, okay, but it is not, by definition, marriage. So, by the definition of marriage contained in the Hebrew Scriptures, whatever those types of relationships are, they are not marriage. You do not have a marital partner if you have that situation. It doesn't belong to you. I can't take your car, your house, your kids, and redefine them. They are not yours. But wait a minute now. So what? Okay, so they're not marriage. Who cares if we engage in that lifestyle anyway? What's the problem with fornication? By the way, for a lot of young people nowadays, that's their exact question. What's the problem with what the Bible would call fornication? Well, you have to understand something. The tick-tock gentleman does not want me to give him the right to have that relationship. What he wants me to do is okay his relationship. And what he wants, the tick-tock gentleman, is for the Bible to approve of his particular brand of fornication. There are a lot of brands of fornication in the world, and this is just one of them. And the tick-tock gentleman would like me to approve of them. It's not a matter of me being afraid of him. He wants my approval. He does not want me to get rid of my fear. He is not desensitizing me in any way so that I can be a less fearful person. What he wants is acceptance. That's why this is being pushed on society. And it is a matter of ordered, acceptable relationships and disordered ones. And so, yeah, that's what we're really dealing with. Now, one of the big problems with this whole area, and I don't care if it's you fall in love with your couch and you want to marry it, you fall in love with whatever, is that we do not understand in our society what human sexuality is tied to or why it exists. This is the stuff of youth groups. Human beings need to understand that human sexuality, as a wonderful gift, is tied to God's intent and is not there for our mere pleasure. That does not mean to say it is not pleasurable. It means it does not exist for my mere pleasure. It has a higher purpose to it. Now, where did I ever get that idea from? Well, what is the greatest commandment? Well, I went back to Deuteronomy, but Jesus quotes it in Matthew and Mark. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. That is the greatest commandment. Let's just put that out there. By the way, a lot of times homosexuals will go to Jesus and go to the sections where he talks about God loving people, and say, well, this is acceptable. Understand that Jesus regarded this as the highest, most perfect commandment. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Notice that Jesus begins with this commandment to love God with everything we have first, and as a second corollary commandment to love our neighbor as ourselves. Why in that order? Because human beings are image bearers, and if you don't love the Creator, you're not going to love his picture. And so that gives us a transcendent reason for loving our neighbor. It follows that any sexual union not in line with loving God, according to the definition of covenant union and the purpose of the genders, with all that we would be, is unacceptable. In other words, human sexuality is not about what people necessarily want. That's radical. That's absolutely crazy radical. Try that on your youth group. But it's the very place we need to begin. All of human life has a purpose to it. To be image bearers, and in being image bearers, to be image bearers, we need to love God with all that we are. And physical union shares this very purpose. It's not shocking. But it is shocking because our society doesn't believe that anymore. And it's what we need to go back to. This is a biblical ethic. And so I can honestly say to somebody who says, I want to do this, why isn't it okay? It's not okay because it's not marriage. It's not the way things were supposed to be. And it's not the way physical union was designed by its purpose. And it doesn't matter what you like. It doesn't matter how you feel. It does on a personal level, but it doesn't on a spiritual level. I care because I care about the individual, but I understand that their feelings don't change the reality of the way things are. But wait a minute. God is love, right? And love is love, or all love is love. Now, I've seen enough bumper stickers like this to make me sick for a lifetime. This is a counter argument. Okay? There's a host of verses people will go to, like Jonathan loved David, and love is love, and all love is love. I even saw that on a jeans commercial. It was just awful. All love is love. Well, let's talk about this biblically. Okay? What is love? Glendale Tony, who I had on, used to have this great song. I really almost wanted to have his guitar. It went, we say we love Coca-Cola. We say we love apple pie. We say we love our Chevrolets. We say we love, but we lie. And that's the way the song started out. God defines love. There's the definition. Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. That is the definition of love. Okay? He defines it for us. He tells these pagan Corinthians who are having all sorts of trouble living near the temple of Venus what love is. Shout out to our Elizabeth. He states what love is. See, I can test what I think love is against this. This is Paul's definition to a congregation that had all sorts of problems with sexual sin because they were living near the temple of Venus and they'd been paganized. And it was creeping in to the church. Paul defines it. Which one of those attributes require physical intimacy? The answer is none of those attributes require physical intimacy. See, when I say all love is love, you have to define love. There is love defined. None of the attributes of love that Paul gives us in 1 Corinthians 13 require physical intimacy. I can love somebody without being physically intimate to them. And so when my dear friend who is trapped in this lifestyle says all love is love, I would say, yeah, all love is love, and this is what love is. Furthermore, if all love is love, that makes pedophilia acceptable. It's funny that this gentleman on this tick-tock was so against pedophilia, but so for homosexuality. His argument cuts both ways. If all love equals sex and all loving equals sex, then pedophilia is indeed acceptable. After all, I am a father. Don't I love my children? That argument is flawed to the max. All love is love, but love doesn't require physical intimacy to be love. And so that's a misunderstanding of love. In fact, some love is not love at all. Some love is lust. So when someone says all love, is it love we're talking about? Is it lust we're talking about? Is it self-interest we're talking about? What are we talking about? Now, the Greek word for lust has a few places in the New Testament where it is used and defined as strong desire. There are those instances in where the Greek word is used to indicate a strong desire for something. Even the Lord. That's because the Greek word has a little bit of play to it. But in terms of sexual desire, it usually refers to lust. So when it's taken out of the context and placed within a sexual context, it often is referring to lust. In other words, these places where it has a broader meaning are not referenced to physical, intimate relations by and large. I mean, you don't see that. That's not a feature. So I pulled out M.G. Easton's Illustrated Bible Dictionary and Treasury of Biblical History, page 431, where lust is defined as an inward sin that leads to a falling away from God or a sinful longing. Lust, the origin of sin, is placed in the heart, not of necessity, but because it's the center of our moral forces. And he's just making a comment about lust and why Paul deals with it that particular way. Now, some love is lust. Okay? Now, when we go ahead and say that, we need to say your love is not really love. Because if you want the best for you and the best for that person, you would want them to be the person they were created to be. So although it feels like something akin to love, it is not functioning as a normative ordered love. It is misfunctioning. Okay. Now I did include a caveat to the church. Okay. We need to start teaching physical intimacy as having the purpose of glorifying God, okay, being for him and his purposes, and not merely our pleasure. Now, again, I don't want to take away from the Book of Solomon, which, by the way, you do not want to read. Rabbi said men under the age of 30 could not read that book because it is extremely graphic. You didn't know that probably, but there's a lot of symbolism in the Song of Solomon. I would never, in fact, at our Christian conferences, pointed out that a couple should mutually enjoy that within the bounds of marriage. And if they're not, that's like a shame because God would want that. But that's not the purpose. And we need to get back to telling young people in the church the creational value of displaying God uniquely. One of the things they brought over and over again in that marriage conference is the idea of at-one-ment and the idea that your marriage, if you have one, uniquely displays God to creation, the rest of the body of Christ, and other human beings in a unique way. And it says something about God. So your marriage is not just for you. I mean, that was shocking to some couples. Your marriage does not exist for you. Your marriage exists for God. Everything you do, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory of God in Christ Jesus. That's the way it is. So we need to go ahead and start talking about God's intent for marriage God's purpose for marriage, and the fact that it is not all about us. That is just terribly shocking. That needs to go on in marriage counseling. That needs to go on in youth groups. God is not a cosmic killjoy. It is the misuse of something when we do that. That's why God hates it. Okay? And so understand the person's disordered desire, but the bottom line is they are misusing a good that God created in such a way that it creates a problem. Let's see if we can start wrapping this up. The overall meta-narrative of the Hebrew Scriptures or Tanakh in no way indicate that homosexuality is an okay lifestyle. Not only don't the verse that the tick-tock man quoted not indicate what he thinks it indicates, but the meta-narrative or overall story of the Hebrew Scriptures does not indicate what he wants it to indicate. And the next week, there are two clear stories that are tied to the fact that this is not okay, that people want to redefine, that indicate it's not okay. So there are two narratives that touch on this that others want to make about other things. One is Judges with the tribe of Benjamin, and the other is in Sodom. And so that's what we're dealing with there. Now, tomorrow we'll be dealing with the doctrine of the atonement as it connects to the story in Matthew. So we're going to look at Jesus' crucifixion. We're going to discuss a few theories of the atonement. We're going to look at the issue of limited atonement as a doctrine. And we'll be looking at those things tomorrow. So I want to encourage you to be there. For those that missed out before, the Strong Tower Conference is coming. There will be a gentleman from Australia represented, Samuel Green. He'll be represented long distance. Samuel's been on M2M quite a bit. And so we've got an Aussie that will be long distancing in and doing some workshops. Incredible in his ability to deal with text criticism in the Quran and some other issues. And we'll have other gentlemen there. There's info in the section there. Some things will be put on live. I want to grab some of that material for you guys, but I want to do it in an ethical, loving way, because George is a wonderful guy. I don't think there'll probably be tremendous questions on this because I think it's not necessarily unstraightforward for us. Do see if you've got a friend who is struggling with a lifestyle and they would actually be willing to go through this. I wouldn't mind. I mean, I would want them to look at some of the arguments in the meta-narrative. So, so that is available. We'll see. Any other things? Some great personal stuff. Oops, sorry. That's Elizabeth saying she's personal friends with Steve Green, Facebook friends. He'll be involved. So, and when things get posted, I'll let you know. Tomorrow will probably be a little longer. Just a little heads up. You really can't get into theories of atonement. I don't know how much longer. There may be questions raised as we deal with theories of atonement. And in my comments on them, or you may find yourself wanting to comment on one or more of those theories, and then we'll be dealing with or touching on limited atonement. And so promises to be maybe a little bit longer, which is good because I want these to get a little bit longer. Okay. Well, I was either real clear or I was real unclear. So it is great having you guys here. And I'm going to get ready to say Erev Tov. And thank you, Brother Steve. Threw up something there. Okay. And we even have a gentleman in the church. Earlier start. I'm going to try to start right at 6 There was a question there. Let me just bring that up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to start when I said I was going to start, and just get myself prepped while the timer's going before 6, so that if someone tunes in, they're not getting the timer. I like the music and picture, but somebody else who isn't here, who isn't used to it, might not. And I want to be sensitive to this. We'll miss you, Slam, but it's always up there, and you can always view it later. So, and you probably will find it interesting. By the way, you can comment directly to me, either Patreon-wise, or you can comment in the video. You can leave like comments, and I can get back to you. So if you view something and you didn't get to say what you want to say, throw it in the comment section of the video. There's like a way to do that, to leave comments. And I can even bring some of those up, and just say, hey, there are some really good points or comments from the last video, and I'm going to take a few minutes, because I'm not opposed to that either. So I'm going to go ahead and there we go. And so, yeah, we even have some people here who are supposedly immune, but they're not. So I'm not going to go into that. But looks like you guys are having some real problems there in Australia. So, all righty. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the PowerPoint down. Look at that. I'm back. And I'm going to Erev Tov. You guys are absolutely great. I hope this gets out to more folks, and some people take it, just because I'd like to see more people, who get to see these, and maybe get more. Who knows? We got a faithful community. We're strong, but we're mighty. But, we might get bigger and be mighty. That would be great. So, blessings to all, and Erev Tov.